What's going on, YouTube? This is your Melanated Warrior, Haywood Haynes, and this is part two. We're going to get right off into it. You know, when we left off, we like to obviously brush up on some of the things that we said in the previous segment. And, like I said, notice how and we're going to go into why they vilify it. And even when when we read that segment, it was talking about the vice industries. They did mention alcohol, because I said they don't mention alcohol. They do, but they don't, they never head off. Like when you talk about alcohol, it never has the same reputation. It pales in comparison to how it's vilified, and how in contrast to marijuana. Like, cannabis has always been vilified because we know that we've had an intimate connection with it. So even when they talk about it, they don't, and we all know that. We know that even a Christian can have a drink or two. For most people who embrace this idea of using a plant for whether it's for recreation or medicinal purposes, it's still something that's frowned upon, because we've allowed the Blanco to get in our head and convince us that something that God, that the Most High had participating in bringing life into, that somehow it's evil. But we all know that this war that we see, or these wars that we see, are really nothing more but wars that are directed against Mother Nature. That's what we know. We know that for a fact, because the end result is what? They feel like they've mastered this realm's technology to where they can block out the central power source that we know is the sun. So, we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to show you exactly why, as like I said, it gets a bad rap. They may throw in all of the other, and then we're going to also prove too, like I said before, I had this, I was going back and forth with a blogger who's like, America wasn't built on drugs. Yes, it was. Because I don't buy into the narrative of slavery. You guys all know why. I think that I provided ample enough evidence in order to show you why. But if you subscribe to that, that's on you. But the fact of the matter is, when you take a look at the opium wars, when you take a look at alcohol, when you take a look at marijuana, heroin, look at the pharmaceutical industry. That shows you how look, 6 times more people are addicted to prescription medication than all illegal drugs combined. There is no... Look, this is why, y'all, if y'all don't get it, man, and if y'all still think that America, like we said, these drugs and weapons, that's how they get down. But we're going to take a look at an article from The Insider. And what does it say? How racism contributed to marijuana prohibition in the U.S. Let's read. These are some of the bullet points. The legal status of cannabis has been in question in the U.S. since people started regularly smoking it in the early 1900s. Now, see, mind you, there's always a little bit of bias, because remember, when they picked us up in them ships, we the ones who introduced them to cannabis smoking, so it didn't get popular in the 1900s. The debate continues today, with Attorney General Jeff Sessions taking a firm stance against legalization and insisting that federal prohibition laws be enforced, even where states have made it legal. Now, these states, we already, got information from other articles that say that what? These states are making billions of dollars in revenue. So think about this. This is why I said it's always a war on you. Because you're going to go punish the citizens, but yet the state governments have already collected billions of dollars. If you're going to go after them, go get the money. As it turns out, some roots in racist rhetoric pushed by politicians in the media in the 1930s, when it first became illegal. Now, we're going to read. This is a source. Weird orgies, wild parties, roots in hell. How did marijuana get such a bad rap? The answer is simple. Racism. As early as the 1800s, there were no federal restrictions on the sale or possession of cannabis in the U.S. Hemp fiber from the plant was used to make clothes, paper, and rope. Now, pause. Remember how I told you how they use people who are inexperienced with these, in these areas to write these articles? Because they know for the vast majority of people aren't involved in the entire process. They see the finished product. But we all know who growers that the hemp plant and the marijuana plant are cousins, 2 totally different plants. They're obviously, they look identical because of the characteristics, but one produces buds that have no THC, no psychoactive properties. The other one does. Okay, and that hemp plant is what they're talking about. But I digress. This is why, like we said, we have to do our homework, and we can't be working on compartmentalized information. Let's read on. U.S. hemp fiber from the plant was used to make clothes, paper, and rope. Sometimes it was used medicinally, but as a recreational drug. See how they're conflating the two. See, you just, like I said, you have to be mindful of that. It wasn't that widespread. A New York Times article from 1876 even cites the positive use of cannabis to cure a patient's dropsy. And dropsy is basically swelling from an accumulation of fluid. Now, In the early 1900s, an influx of Mexican immigrants came to the U.S. fleeing political unrest in their home country. With them, they brought, now notice that, commit that to memory, fleeing political unrest. With them, they brought the practice of smoking cannabis recreationally. Like nobody was smoking cannabis recreationally until the Mexicans came across the border. And it took off. The Spanish word for the plant started to be used more often too, marijuana, or as it was spelled at the time, marijuana with an H. That is when the more sensational headlines about the drug began to appear. In 1936, a propaganda film called Reefer Madness, which is also a book too, which is an excellent book, excellent read, get that if you're interested in all of this, was released. In the movie, teenagers smoke weed for the first time, and this leads to a series of horrific events involving hallucination, attempted rape, and murder. Much of the media portrayed it as a gateway drug. Now, it says, now remind you, commit this to memory. It says, marijuana, a powerful excitant, produces unpredictable emotional results. But its greatest danger lies in the fact that it is a stepping stone to the harder drugs such as morphine and heroin. Now, this is why I say, look how crafty the Blanco is. If it's a stepping stone to heroin and harder drugs, why is it in Schedule 1? With heroin and meth and LSD. If it's a stepping stone, it wouldn't be in the same fucking class, you idiot! The following year in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed. Cannabis sales were now taxed. Part of the reason this act was passed was because of all the fear-mongering going on at the time. And a huge instigator of that fear-mongering was the man behind the Marijuana Tax Act, Harry Anslinger. Anslinger was named the commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics during the Prohibition era. But once national prohibition ended in 1933, Anslinger turned his focus to marijuana. That is when racism and xenophobia really kicked in. Now remember, that, like I said, that's when racism and xenophobia really kicked in, because during the Prohibition era, when alcohol was illegal, who was the primary bootlegger? You see what I'm saying? And then so this is just another way to criminalize a group or a segment of the population. Because remember, this was also the period of nationalization. So the Italians, the Germans, which, English is part of the German, remember, all languages are related genetically because of the Germanic tribes. You have the English to the Dutch and German, right? So we have to realize that Germans were the biggest population amongst Europeans here in the United States, all up until, and they were the biggest, the vast majority of immigrants of the European persuasion all up until 1980, I believe. So you got to understand that the vast majority of so-called Europeans, in the United States of America were of German descent or related to the Germanic tribes. But anyway, I digress. Fact of the matter is that they knew that in order to gain this power, that they had to get those ethnic groups to stop warring with one another. And then they're like, oh, well, okay, we noticed that this particular group of people, and then at this time, remind you, the ones occupying their prisons are Blancos. Look at the figures. They practically reversed themselves after these acts. You had 70%, or if not 60 to 70% of inmates in prison systems were white males. Okay? Then after these acts had passed, you fast forward 60, 70, 80 years, 100 years, then who fills up their prison systems? Their prisons, rather. You see, so remind you, in 1933, that's when they say, okay, well, alcohol is legal now. And we look at alcohol. Now, this is one thing this is critical for your understanding. You have to understand how, drugs has built America. And we look at alcohol and people who start businesses up. Imagine how important, just think about how important alcohol is to these industries. You go to a restaurant, you go to a club. Most people don't go there to drink apple juice and water. Imagine if you took the alcohol out of these convenience stores, out of these liquor stores. That's 60, 70% of some of their damn revenue. Imagine if they took the cigarettes, because since cigarettes is not illegal, but yet it kills a ton of people, because the Blanco said it was legal, you don't even factor in that cigarettes, kills people. And it is a drug. And it is addictive. And yet, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Giants are built off of drugs. Now, same source. Harry Anslinger took the scientifically unsupported idea. That's not a shock, because ain't no such thing as a Blanco scientist. Of marijuana as a violence-inducing drug, connecting it to black and Hispanic people, and created a perfect package of terror to sell to the American media in public. Now think about it. Look how they worded. See how crafty they are in their wording? They said connecting it to black and Hispanic people and created a perfect package of terror to sell to the American media in public. Okay, if it's isolating black and Hispanics, then the American public is white folks. See how they talk? By emphasizing the Spanish word marijuana instead of cannabis, he created a strong association between the drug and the newly arrived Mexican immigrants who helped to popularize it in the States. He also created a narrative around the idea that cannabis made black people forget their place in society. He pushed the idea that jazz was evil music created by people under the influence of marijuana. Now, we're going to get to that. We're going to read a little bit more, then we're obviously going to, I'm going to offer my thoughts. It says, but these racist ideas didn't just influence the media's portrayal of the public's perception of the drug. The discrimination they encouraged was evident in real numbers. In the first full year after the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, black people were about 3 times more likely to be arrested for violating narcotic drug laws than whites. And Mexicans were nearly 9 times more likely to be arrested for the same charge. Now, like I said, pause again, always take into account the numbers. If a lot of them are not already here, of course, if you have already stigmatized a group of people, of course they're going to be dramatically affected. But the whole thing was to get those who they considered to be their citizens, because you could get them out of your country on other charges. They could just be here illegally, and you would have grounds to deport them or to incarcerate them. But for us, it was different. We were fighting for rights, which we already felt, or which they already said were inalienable, which were rights that couldn't be taken away from us, right? That we were guaranteed under the Constitution. So the fact of the matter is, we know who it was disproportionately affecting. It says by 1952, the Boggs Act was passed. This made sentencing for drug convictions mandatory. A first offense for possession could land you 2 to 5 years in prison and a fine up to $2,000. Now listen to this, a first offense for possession. They act like you couldn't, have it. The 1952 Boggs Act just gave you prison time for it because remember, they just had the Tax Act of 1937. So which meant that they were taxing it. And if you didn't pay your taxes, if you were a distributor, if you were a grower, if you were a recreational user, if you weren't paying taxes on it, then it was considered illegal. And you have to understand that this is a conceptual framework that you have to become intimately connected with, or that you have to become intimately in tune with in this country, which is that everything is illegal until they give you the right to use it, taking the illegality away from it. You see what I'm saying? Because look, even like driving a car, I don't care if you could drive well at 14, 15. If you don't have a license, now we already know about black law and, color of law. We're not talking about that. We're just saying we're just going to keep it surface level for a second. Just let you know how corporate America operates. So if you even though you're physically capable of driving, if you're not licensed to drive, then what? You're committing that's illegal. You can smoke marijuana, right, recreationally, but you still have to be of a certain age. Okay? You can drink, but you still have to be of a certain age. Other than that, it's illegal. Everything is illegal until you meet the requirements to make it legal. That's what you need to know. So you hear them talking this garbage. You see how these dips and dives, this left and right turns and stuff, that they're sending you through all in one article. Because as we know, like we said, let's read on. It says, young white people resisted mainstream culture and powerful institutions. This was the era of hippies. Now, notice they called them hippies when they were using marijuana. Beatniks and flower power. But despite all the peace and love, now, when they used marijuana, it was peace and love. When blacks and Hispanics use marijuana, it's rape and murder. But despite all the peace and love, laws continue to emphasize the severity of the drug. The Controlled Substance Act of 1970 passed under President Nixon. This is where you get the first war on drugs. So this is the thing we have to understand. Now it's a controlled substance. Now it's Schedule 1. Now it's in the category of LSD, heroin, cocaine. You see what I'm saying now? But mind you, as they say too early in the article, what do they say? It's a gateway drug. How can it be a gateway drug when it's Schedule 1? It's just the drug now. It's either marijuana, LSD, heroin, meth. That's what it is. But notice, see how tricky it is? And then these Blancos sit up here and tell you racism doesn't exist. Because like Martin Luther King said, and the only truth that I really got from him was that he said that, look what? It is couched in their language. You see, just in the same article, he said, oh, the hippies, when they used it, it was about love and, it was about flower power and they were trying to spread love. But when black people used it, they wanted to commit crimes and rape white women. See, because you've allowed him to demonize nature. What did I say to a large extent that this was a war on nature? Didn't I tell you that? Look, I want to read something interesting. And I'm going to read this because I found it very interesting. Let me get to it. Now, this is something I'm going to read about just what the Most High has surrounded you by, where the Most High placed you, birthed you, in the garden. All right. And why would the Most High do that? Like we said, sometimes when we add a little bit of what we know, from nature, the metu neta, when we incorporate, the information hidden in plain sight, a lot of this, is no longer complicated. Now, I'm going to read you something. This is from www.thought.com. And then the title of this is How Much Oxygen Does One Tree Produce? A mature leafy tree produces as much oxygen in a season as 10 people inhale in a year. A 100-foot tree, 18 inches in diameter at its base, produces 6,000 pounds of oxygen. On average, one tree produces nearly 260 pounds of oxygen each year. 2 mature trees can provide enough oxygen for a family of 4. So imagine, think about this, is deep. Imagine if a nuclear devastation had occurred or a nuclear fallout. If you happen to have some emergency equipment like, solar, solar generators, and if you were to have, like I said, access to that, and then you had some plants, 3, 4, 5 plants in your underground bunker or something, as long as you were able to, provide them with light, they could give you oxygen. You see what I'm saying? And you can give them carbon dioxide. There is this symbiotic relationship that you have with them. So how did you let him outlaw something that God had created to have a relationship with you? Think how powerful plants have to be. They can't move. Yet somehow you find yourself planting them in your front yard. You think that they're not intelligent? They get you to take care of them. See, that's why I say all of the time we can't get distracted. Here at the FOF Squad, we do our research, man. We ain't for no games. And really the thing is what we try to pride ourselves on is devastating logic, and that comes about by understanding what is hidden in plain sight. You see, like I said before, if we didn't have to be worried about the military-industrial complex, a president wouldn't have warned us. If it had good intentions, then, we wouldn't have had one of our presidents warn us of, like I said, its expansion. Right? And so, when we take a look at, as we said before, the growth of this industry, and because it's still vilified by the federal government, because they're like, we want to enforce those who still use. Yeah, they ain't talking about the states. They're not going to lock up these politicians. They're not going to lock up all of these people making money hand over fist off of you, but they still want to go to war with you. You see what Jeff Sessions said? We still want to put the full weight of the federal law and blah, 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 even though it's actually legal in Washington, D.C. Make it make sense. It's always a war against the people. Like we said, art will soon imitate life. All those movies, you think they ain't gonna top 9/11? You see, because you're letting people steer and move you in different directions and have you captivated and have you overwhelmed by information that doesn't really help you. Yeah, it gets you triggered. It triggers you. And then you get to thinking, they're not going to do this, they're not going to do that, because the end game is will never change. They're here to take over this realm. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. How many people do you have to see die? You know, that's what we said before. We're not taking appropriate, you know, we're not making sure that we at least are prepared even when we know it's about to happen. Like, remember I mentioned the riots before, or the marches or the protests, right? Like, we've already seen in 2020 alone, like, if anybody was to ever participate in the march, they should sit up there and organize themselves appropriately, right? It should damn near be like a military exercise. They should sit up there and be preparing themselves, making sure that it's at least one man to every 2-3 women and children, that they're, you know, that they have, you know, ways to communicate with each other with walkie-talkies, just in case you run into somebody trying to drive a truck through y'all, or just pulling a Kyle Rittenhouse. How you not prepared? Then all of a sudden, what do they want to do? One of them gets shot, or one of them, you know, ends up in that you know, compromising situation. Oh man, you know, racism. Shut up. And this is what I'm talking about. See, like I said, racism is so powerful that when they're using it on a subliminal level, blancos nor black people catch it. You see? And so, like we said, you have blancos sit up there and try to, you know, marginalize everything that you go through. Oh yeah, you know, you mentioned how they, you know, don't give you proper care, and you know, when you go to the hospital. Oh well, you know, I had an auntie, she had you know, they didn't give her the proper medical care, and she ended up dying. Then you talk about how you lost a job because, you know, that you probably were discriminated against. Oh well, you know, I pulled myself up and I started my own business and blah 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 and all of that different stuff. But this is the thing, like we said, it's no area of life activity you can talk about where blancos won't have a reason as to why as you should just ignore that. But then, like we said, do the math, add them all together, then factor in also your numbers. Something ain't right. I don't care if the bureaucracy is equitable in how it pushes out its discriminatory practices. If my numbers aren't there, then we stand to be annihilated. Exterminated. You see what I'm saying? So we can't let them continue to keep doing that. We can't let them, you know, because I see that that's the hot topic. They want to blame it on us. And think about it. They were extremely quiet. Blancos were extremely quiet in 2008 after the TARP program, Troubled Assets Relief Program, that was started by Bush but then pushed in by Obama. Because, you know, them corporations were too big to fail. And they took billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money and went on vacation. Bought vacation homes. What did these blancos do? Oh, you know, the 1%, yeah. But did they go storm the Capitol? No. Did they sit up here and now they talking about this little bitty ass money? And oh, they don't want to go back to work. Oh, didn't we just establish that most people are starting their own businesses? And unfortunately, yeah, for every market, there's a black market. Look at that term. Everything black, remember, cost in the language. Black market, black ball, black day, all of this different stuff. Whatever we do is no good. Even the color that we are associated with is negative. This is in the language. So the thing is, when black people go out there and start their own business, all of a sudden, the blanco come back and say, oh, why ain't you coming back slaving for me? Why ain't you flipping my pancakes, flipping my burgers, mopping my floors? Why ain't you in the service industry that he done damn near automated completely at this moment in time? So he wants you to get a job which may be temporary in nature anyways. So that's crazy to me. And this is one of these arguments, but yet when you talk to these blancos, they want to say, oh yeah, you know, people sitting back and they're collecting unemployment. They just totally ignoring that weed is booming. Money is literally growing on trees. So we have to also remember to move according to resources. Remember when the auto industry picked up and started booming, the 40s and the 50s, okay? We picked up and we moved to Detroit. We moved to areas where, you know, we can get those good jobs. Now we move according to entertainment. Oh, why you moving to Atlanta? Oh, nigga, because it's popping. Never mind that they running out of water, that they feud over water with Alabama and Florida and stuff. Never mind all of that. I'm going to move to Las Vegas. It's popping. Never mind Las Vegas ain't got no water. You want to be around resources. You see, this is that's what's critical. That's where we get lost. And so since we're lost and and we find ourselves wandering about in the wilderness, people always ask, okay, well, why do you harp on, why don't we just all come together? We can't look, these are the people I'm around more often than not. I don't live around Blancos like that. You see, even out here in the country, my next door neighbor is of my persuasion. Right? That's who I deal with. Okay? And so more than likely, we are the only ones that are more likely to help each other out. Not to say that you won't run into somebody from a different background that may, offer assistance or that may help you to get a leg up. We're not saying that. But we're saying that obviously that doesn't help the whole. That is not being done enough, in order to alleviate all of the stress that we see, being dealt with by our communities. So, this idea of thinking that we can outsource, the weapons needed to ensure our liberation is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Because think about it. Since the conception of slavery in this country, you've always had Blancos working with you. The abolitionist movement and the civil rights movement. And even now, where has it gotten you? The proudest moment, especially since you have a paternalistic nature, a paternalistic relationship with these Blancos, the proudest moment of any parent should be when your baby walks on its own. You know how in the first steps you walk with them. Why don't nobody want black people to walk on their own? That's all I'm asking. Why not? Then they send these people to you, because I'm not going to say no names, because people hated on me when I did that segment about who, when. And I told y'all that y'all didn't look, and a lot of people didn't do no homework. You didn't look at the fact that we had Black Wall Street before Wall Street popped up. And they were afraid of that. So they got this very person who's very popular, who Dr. Umar champions. They got him to get us to invest in Wall Street. $5 a stock. Made $800,000 his first year, which is the equivalent of $12 to $20 million. Never took one trip to Africa. Did it for 6 years. I'm sorry, man. I told her I wouldn't go, but this is what I'm talking about. And was pardoned by the president, went to jail for mail fraud, telling our people that we were buying stock in a ship called the SS Phyllis Wheatley, but really it was the Orion, buying his dilapidated ships from the U.S. government. This is what people do. And it just so happens that these very same people who try to mimic their strategies end up displaying the same type of behavior. Untrustworthy, dishonest individuals who should know that at this point in time, we need all the help we can get now. We have no time to wait. I'm sorry, I don't care if anybody disagrees with me. This is facts over feelings. I just heard, by 2022 we should be open. By 2022? You see all these countries going to war? You think this world gonna look the same in 2022? And then this same individual talking about, our people shouldn't take the vaccines. Okay, well, if they let you open up a school, you don't think they're gonna force you to have these children vaccinated? This man sounds like this is like, because unfortunately, people can talk well. And these same people criticize other individuals. Like, let me tell you something. Even though I don't agree, I'm not going to agree with everybody. And neither is everybody going to agree with me. That's fine. That's totally fine, because what does that establish? That means that you're thinking for yourself. But the thing is that, whether I agree with these individuals or not, I still give them their props. And I would rather my people be listening to these individuals than, because see, this is one thing that's critical. See, we understand how powerful the media is, in terms of, crafting a narrative and getting people to believe, what they want them to believe. We understand that. Okay, so since we understand that, then why don't we place a lot of emphasis on making sure that our people, listen to people from our community? Because we know some people say, they're on YouTube just talking. So they on TV just talking. Okay? So it's like we know that the first one to the mind is the winner. And we should be able to criticize individuals from our community, past and present, and evaluate them. So what? We make better moves for right now and for the future. Just like they'll tell you, like, most of their great thinkers, their methods and their strategies are outdated. Yet that still don't stop them from giving credit to Charles Darwin. That still don't stop them from giving credit to Isaac Newton. That still don't stop them from getting, credit to this man and that man. So we should be able to do the same thing without it being considered black blasphemy. Oh, you brought up such and such. That's a no-no. Come on, man. This is... like I said before, man, what I've established, I think without a shadow of a doubt, is we know for a fact they don't want us to have any independence. They see for a fact that people are making money hand over fist for something that is now legal. All right? And they're mad that since people took some time off reevaluating their situations and understand that, look, they don't want to be caught in a compromising situation to where they have to, be at the mercy of someone giving them a check and then telling them that they got to take a jab to get this check or whatever the case may be. They want their independence. And yet you got these people who claim that they're not racist sitting up there parroting these bullcrap ass arguments by the mainstream. Oh, well, people are not going back to work. The service sector, which is really, the giant that they're talking about, they can't, they're offering $15, $16 an hour. Well, you can take a seed that you paid $11 for, and it could potentially net you $600, $700 from one plant. Or you can go work $16, $17 or $15 for that whole hour. Laboring. Who's going to look? Like I said before, people just making rational decisions, man, because people's families hang in a balance. Our future hangs in a balance. You see what I'm saying? So, we got to, until we assess a situation and we bring all variables into, as we evaluate these things, then, we dealing with people who going to trigger you emotionally or try to make you feel some type of way or make your people feel some type of way when they're taking measures to garner or to gain true independence, right? And to prevent themselves from being in a situation where, their family lives or their lives are in jeopardy, which in turn jeopardizes the future in and of itself. So, you about to hear more from me. Like I said, you rocking with the FOF squad. We out here. It's a lot of, we're going to get off into the alchemical side of the game as well, too. Just wanted to take this time to put two segments together to, dispel some myths, right? And to get us back on track and to keep us on track if we did happen to veer off and allow someone to convince us of something that really doesn't exist, because this political theater and they're playing it very well because this is what they do. But this is your boy, Heru Heinous, and this is the FOF squad. We out here.